I remember early on in my life, we lived in a neighborhood, and there was something on the news or something about a child that had been kidnapped, I guess close to our neighborhood. And I was probably 5 or 6 years old. And from that moment in time, like I would never let my little sister out of my sight. Like if we went outside to play, my mom would always say, "Don't let your sister out of your sight. A child was kidnapped." And that's carried on. Even to this day, I still fight against that. But that was kind of the beginning of the worry for me, even as a young kid. Fear for me, especially when I met my wife, was anytime she went on a business trip, I would literally like not eat for a couple days because I was afraid she was gonna get in some kind of physical harm would happen to her. So it just was an over-consuming, like I could just describe it as a horrible feeling. Like it consumed my day, worrying about my wife being on a bus to a work event or being on the airplane, being in the airport. And also around money too. I would say personal safety and money. Fear of money, like checking my bank account 15 times a day, when obviously I did realize later that it only changes once a day. But I would check it 15 times a day just to see, are we gonna have enough money for this? Are we gonna have enough money for that? One day my wife we were sitting in service and there was a little blurb about Go Mumbai, a trip. And I believe at the time it was the first one we had gone on. And she's sitting there and she's like, "I think I'm gonna go on this trip." And I'm like, "I'm not, I don't want to." And then especially when she told me how much it cost, it was pretty much a double no for me. She basically just told me, she was like, "I'm gonna go. I'd love to have you go with me, but if you're not gonna go, then I'll find a friend who will go with me." So that was the first time it was like, I actually went on the trip because of fear, because I didn't want my wife to go by herself. So it's kind of strange how God worked. He used the thing that I was worried about to actually get me to go on the trip, and that trip ended up changing my life. Interestingly enough, leading up to the trip, I don't know how many folks remember, but there were terrorist attacks in Mumbai about 2 months before we left. And that was the first time that I wrestled with it. Like, I think 200 people were killed, and supposedly they were targeting Westerners. So of course I had Fox News on, and I'm watching this on TV. I call my wife. I was like, "We'll give the money back. We're not going. Like, it's not a safe place." And she basically just told me, like, just turn the TV off. Don't watch the TV. And she's like, "I'm still going." So that was the first time where I was like scared to death to do something that I actually did. So when we went over there, once you're in a different place like that, you realize very quickly that things are not in your control. So if you try and grasp onto control of specifically your personal safety, you'll drive yourself crazy. You won't make it. So throughout the first part of that week, it was just kind of I didn't know I was doing it consciously, but just kind of releasing and putting things in God's hands. At the end of the trip, there was a situation in one of the aftercare homes where it was by far the most powerful day of my life. This young lady who was in the aftercare home, and I had actually, at the end of the day, I started crying. And this girl came up to me and she wiped the tears away from my eyes and she was like, "It's okay, Todd. Don't worry about it. Everything's gonna be okay." And I had this feeling, like at the time, like I definitely felt like something came into my body supernaturally, and I had this feeling like I'd never felt before. And I didn't even know at the time how to process that. But leaving India, when I brought it back, every time I would get into a situation of like fear for either my safety, my wife's safety, finances, there was always this little voice in the back of my head, and it came through this girl's voice, like basically, "Don't worry about it, everything's gonna be okay." And I never heard that before, I believe, because I was never in a posture of being open to listening to it. And what I learned was throughout my life, the common theme was I'd always kind of hold things close to me instead of releasing them. But once I started taking that posture of just surrendering and like having a posture of open hands, I had no idea what it looked like, but I was just like, "I'm not sure how this thing works, but I'm just gonna open myself up, and God, I would love for you to come and talk to me." As time goes on, like I get these, how I describe it, very simple, is a nudge. Like if I'm in a situation where I start to feel fear creeping in, whether it's finances, like we're not gonna have enough money to put this into this account and we just had a kid and how are we gonna deal with that? I just kind of put myself in that posture, and I always get, when I feel like it's God talking to me, I always get that sense of, "Hey, don't worry about this. I got it covered. Everything's gonna be okay. Just keep following me and we'll do this thing."